Good day, everyone. My name is Marvis Villamor, and I'm the first reporter from Group 5. And today we were going to tackle the Chapter 5, which is the biodiversity, species interactions, and population control. So, how do species interact? Species interact in five major ways. Ecologists identify five basic types of interactions between species as they share limited resources such as food, shelter, and space. So the five major ways of interactions are the interspecific competition, predation, parasitism, mutualism, and commensalism. Now let's talk first about the interspecific competition. It occurs when members of two or more species interact to gain access to the same limited resources, such as food, water, light, and space. Interspecific competition is a form of competition between different species inhabiting the same ecological area. In interspecific competition, the rivalry is between different species as opposed to another form of competition. Nasa tay gitawag og intraspecific competition. Mao ni ang opposite sa interspecific. So when we say intraspecific competition, it is a form of rivalry between the same species. So to make it short, interspecific is a rivalry between two different species, while the intraspecific is a form of rivalry between the same species. So now let's proceed to the predation. It occurs when a member of one species, meaning the predator, feeds directly on all part of a member of another species, which is the prey. The best known examples of predation involves carnivorous interactions in which one animal consumes another. Think of wolves hunting moose, owls hunting mice, or shrews hunting worms and insects. Next is the parasitism. It occurs when one organism, which is the parasite, feeds on the another organism, which is the host, usually by living on or in the host. A well-known example occurs when ticks latches onto a dog or cat and feeds off of its blood. Also, the protozoan Plasmodium is a common parasite of humans which causes the disease called malaria. Next is the mutualism. Mutualism is an interaction that benefits both species by providing each with food, shelter, or some other resource. One example of it is the bee and the flower. Bees fly from flower to flower gathering nectar which they make into food, benefiting the bees. When they land in a flower, the bees get some pollen on their hairy bodies. And when they land in the next flower, some of the pollen from the first one rubs off, pollinating the plant. So these benefit the plants. In this mutualistic relationship, the bees get to eat and the flowering plants get to reproduce. And the last one is the commensalism. It is an interaction that benefits one species but has little, if any, effect on the other, meaning one organism benefits while the other is not affected. The simplest example of commensalism is a bird making a nest in a tree. The tree provides shelter and protection to the bird without getting significantly harmed or affected by the bird. So those five interactions have significant effects on the resource use and population sizes of the species in an ecosystem. Most species compete with one another for certain resources. The most common interaction between species is the competition for limited resources. When fighting for resources does occur, most competition involves the ability of the species to become more efficient than another species in getting food or other resources. We should always remember that each species plays a role in its ecosystem called ecological niche. When two species compete with one another for the same resources, such as food, light, or space, their niches overlap. The greater this overlap, the more intense their competition for key resources. If one species can take over the largest share of one or more key resources, the other competing species must migrate to another area if possible, shift its feeding habits or behavior through natural selection to reduce or alter its niche. So, ngitan na lang og laing resources para malikayan ang competition. Next, suffer a sharp population decline or become extinct in that area. Some species evolve ways to share resources. Suffer a sharp population decline or become extinct in that area. Some species evolve ways to share resources. Over a time scale long enough for natural selection to occur, populations of some species develop adaptations that allow them to reduce or avoid competition with other species for the same resources. One way this happens is through resource partitioning. Resource partitioning means a process of natural selection that will force competitors to use the same resources differently. It is a way to avoid competition between species and allow for coexistence. So the picture shows resource partitioning, which it really reduced the competition. So naghimo na lang sila og technique. Kaysa mag-compete sila for the same resources, nag-share na lang sila in a unique way. Most consumer species feed on live organisms of other species. Predators have a variety of methods that help them capture prey. Herbivores can simply walk, swim, or fly up to the plants they feed on. For example, sea urchins can move along the ocean bottom to feed on the bases of giant kelp plants. Carnivores feeding on mobile prey have two main options, pursuit and ambush. Some predators, such as the cheetah, catch prey by running fast. Others, such as the American bald eagle, can fly and have keen eyesight. Others, such as wolves and African lions, cooperate in capturing their prey by hunting in packs. Other predators use camouflage to hide in plain sight and ambush their prey. For example, snowy owls hunt in snow-covered areas. Some predators use chemical warfare to attack their prey. For example, spiders and poisonous snakes use venom to paralyze their prey and to deter their predators. Prey species have evolved many ways to avoid predators, including the ability to run, swim, or fly fast, and the highly developed sense of sight or smell that alerts them to the presence of predators. Some avoidance adaptations include protective shells like turtles, another is kanang mga thorns of cacti and rose bushes. Other prey species use the camouflage of certain shapes or colors, or the ability to change color, like chameleons and cuttlefish. Some insect species have shapes that look like wings, bark, thorns, or even bird droppings and leaves. A leaf insect can be almost invisible against its background, as can Arctic hare in its white winter fur. Chemical warfare is another common strategy. Some prey species discourage predators with chemicals that are poisonous, like oleander plants, irritating such as stinging nettles and bombardier beetles, foul-smelling like skunks, skunk cabbages and stink bugs, or foul-tasting such as buttercups and monarch butterflies. Another example, squid and octopus. Diba mo-emit man na sila og black ink? It is because for them to escape and by confusing the predators as well. Many bad-tasting, bad-smelling, toxic, or stinging prey species have evolved warning coloration, brightly colored advertising that enables experienced predators to recognize and avoid them. They flash a warning, "Eating me is risky." For example, when a bird such as a blue jay eats a monarch butterfly, iya dyan na isukan. Because of that, nakalearn na dyan siya nga iya na nalikayan nga klase sa species. Biologist Edward O. Wilson gives us two rules based on coloration for evaluating possible danger from an unknown animal species we encounter in nature. First, if it is small and strikingly beautiful, it is probably poisonous. Second, if it is strikingly beautiful and easy to catch, it is probably deadly. Interactions between predator and prey species can drive each other's evolution. When populations of two different species interact in such a way over a long period of time, changes in the gene pool of one species can lead to changes in the gene pool of the other. Such changes can help both sides to become more competitive or to avoid or reduce competition. Biologists call this process coevolution. Example of it is the interaction between bats, which is the predator, and certain species of moths, which is the prey, and they hunt at night and use echolocation to navigate and to locate their prey, emitting pulses of extremely high frequency and high intensity sound. In doing that, nag-evolve ang mga ears sa moths. So if madunggan sa moths ang frequency sa bats, they will try to escape by dropping to the ground or flying evasively. So that's all. Now let's proceed to the next reporter.
Good day everyone, good day ma'am. Before we proceed to the next presentation, allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Edward Lantigue, the next reporter of this course, Environmental Science, and I am also from BSHM 3B. So, in this chapter, we will tackle about the question, what limits the growth of populations? Or what are some factors why the growth of populations also had limitations? No population can continue to grow indefinitely because of limitations on resources and because of competition among species for those resources. So dili gid kuno mag tuloy-tuloy ang pagdaghan sa populations. It is because there are limitations. Naray limitasyon ang mga resources nga maoray makaya or anarataman ang mga pwede nga ma-consume. And other factors might have competition from species to other species, which they compete on the particular resources in order to survive. Most populations live together in clumps or patches. So, what is population? Population is a group of interbreeding individuals of the same species. So, kabalunutan na. Then, the population distribution includes clumping, uniform dispersion, and random dispersion. So, why clumping? Ano man na may clumping? So, species tend to cluster where resources are available. So, di ba naay mga kanang ubang species nga kanang na sila cluster o maggrupo-grupo bitaw sila kung asa ang na mga resources nga available dito sila, di ba mga naman. Then groups have a better chance of finding clump resources. So kung maggrupo-grupo po sila, mas higher ang chance nga makakita sila og mga mga clump resources or kanang mga nay daghan po nga available nga resources. Then ang third is to protect some animals from predators. So kung maggrupo-grupo sila nga kung na sila mga kalaban nga kanang na mga predators nga gustong mo kuan silang kagrupo di makakuan sila, makaprotect sila sa ilang kanang kagrupo or group mates o ilang cluster kay magtinabangan man na sila. Then packs allow some to get prey. Kung magtapo-tapo po sila, maggrupo po sila, mas easier ra nila nga makakita or makakuha og kanang prey ng ilang makaon. So these are generalized dispersion patterns. So ang clump, uniform, and random, the example dere sa clump ang kanang mga elephants. So tanawan nila kung maggrupo, di ba na sila murag gi-cluster sila, murag grupo sila kung asa ang naay mga available resources dito po sila murag magkatapo. Then sa uniform, gi-example dire ang creosote bush. Ang ilang existence bitaw sa kanang ilang pagtubo bitaw silang kaning bush is na kon sila murag na uniform bitaw sila in that particular nga area. Then ang random example dire ang kanang dandelions, diba napay ubang mga buwak nga magtubo-tubo ra pud sa kasa, murag napay kuan pa ng random muna sila nga mga example. Populations can grow, shrink, or remain stable. Over time, the number of individuals in the population may increase, decrease, or remain about the same, or go up and down in cycles in response to changes in environmental conditions. So there are 4 variables, which are births, deaths, immigration, and immigration. Govern changes in population size. A population increases by birth and immigration, or the arrival of individuals from outside the population, and decreases by death and immigration, or the departure of individuals from the population. Some factors can limit population size because of the range of tolerance. So ang range of tolerance mo na yung kanang murag capacity naman siya ni murag capacity sa kung asa ka for example ang kanang mga kuan kitay flower, for example ani ang flowers nga kuan sunflower kitay ang iyang range of tolerance is kanang mabuhi siya og magwisaw ka ng sa init ra kay o di ba itanom na nimo ng sunflower sa bugnaw nga lugar, tanawag mabuhay ba na di. So murag ana ra pod ang iyang pan. There are variations in physical and chemical environment. Limiting factor principle: too much or too little of any physical or chemical factor can limit or prevent growth of a population, even if all other factors are at or near the optimal range of tolerance. Precipitation, nutrients, and sunlight. So, this one example sa drought of tolerance of temperature. Di makita na to sa kanang example na niya kung ang example na niya ang temperature, kung low ang temperature, di ba? Kinsa may, for example na niya kung kita mga tao kung kinabugnawan na po kayo ang temperature, ganahan ba dita mapuyo na ng lugar. So di ba murag dita makasurvive na nga kung ari pod example pa ari sa kung arang inita ra pod. So di man natap kaya nga mabuhi sa kanang init ra kayo. Dili ko ta mo puyo ana nga kung muni kung asa gyud ang kanang more available resources adto gyud ta maka kuan mas daghan ang populations. No population can grow indefinitely. So some species have an incredible ability to increase their numbers. Members of such populations typically reproduce at an early age, have many offspring each time they reproduce many times, and have a short time between each successive generation. For example, ani is kanang wakin tayo control sa kanang population growth ang kanang species nga of bacteria na kaya nilang makaproduce o makaproduce in every 20 minutes. So og kita nga na kaya nilang makaproduce og 20 minutes maka-form na og layer sa maka-form na og layer na 1 foot deep over the entire earth's surface only in 36 hours. So kung dili gyud makontrol lang, kung way limitation lang pag-growth sa population, di ba, kung atong kanon o inga ang mga bacteria managkan wala po limitations, so mapuno kita ang earth surface for only 36 hours ra. So fortunately this will not happen yun. So research reveals that regardless of their reproductive strategy, no population of a species can grow indefinitely because of limitations on resources and competition with populations of other species for those resources. So in the real world, a rapidly growing population of any species eventually reaches some size limit imposed by the availability of one or more limiting factors such as light, water, space or nutrients, or by exposure to predators, infectious diseases, or too many competitors. These are always limits to population growth in nature. For example, one reason California's southern sea otters, according to the case study of the science focus, face extinction is that they cannot reproduce rapidly. Why do California's sea otters face an uncertain future? So nga naman ang mga kanang sea otters sa California nga nakasaguma man sila og kanang murag wala na klaro nga ilang future. So according to the core case study, the southern sea otter cannot rapidly increase its numbers for several reasons. Female southern sea otters reach sexual maturity between 2 and 5 years of age, can reproduce until age 15, and typically each produce only one pup a year. So laliman ka sa kada tuig isa ra gyud ma kanang may ilang maproduce nga pup. Then the population size of southern sea otters has fluctuated in response to changes in environmental conditions. One such change has been a rise in populations of orcas, killer whales that feed on them. Scientists hypothesize that orcas began feeding more on southern sea otters when populations of their normal prey, sea lions and seals, began declining. Another factor may be parasites known to breed in cats. Scientists hypothesize that some sea otters may be dying because Northern California cat owners flush used feces laden cat litter down their toilets or dump it in storm drains that empty into coastal waters. The feces contain the parasites which then infect the otters. Thorny-headed worms from seabirds also are known to be killing sea otters, as are toxic algae blooms triggered by urea, key ingredients in fertilizer that washes into coastal waters. So the PCBs and other fat-soluble toxic chemicals released by human activities can accumulate in the tissues of the shellfish on which otters feed and prove fatal to otters. The fact that sea otters feed at high trophic levels and live close to the shore makes them vulnerable to these and other pollutants in coastal waters. In other words, as an indicator species, sea otters help to reveal the condition of coastal waters in their habitat. Some southern sea otters also die when they encounter oil spilled from ships. The entire California southern sea otter population could be wiped out by a large oil spill from a single tanker off the state's central coast or from an oil well. Should drilling for oil be allowed off this coast? These factors, mostly resulting from human activities, plus a fairly low reproductive rate, have hindered the ability of the endangered southern sea otter to rebuild its population.
Good day everyone, I'm Richard Butal and I'm gonna report the communities and ecosystem change over time, the ecological succession. What is ecological succession? The types and numbers of species in biological and communities and ecosystem change in response to changing environmental conditions such as eruption, change, and the clearing of forests to plant crop. The gradual change in species composition in given area is called ecological succession. One example of this is the movie of Lion King, where in the first part, when the father of Simba, the Mufasa, have their safari where it has many plants grown, but suddenly when the father of Simba died, the throne was gotten by scars. Then the climate change happened. All plants have gone. Some of species have gone. Species of animals and plants have gone. And then suddenly in the last part, Simba go back in his place. Then she get her throne. She get his throne. So that's and that happened. The plants, the climate change have gone, and the plants were going back, and then some of species animals were going back. The safari, the place of Upasa going to become more productive, where the plants grow more species come. That is a ecological succession. In addition, about the ecological succession is a gradual process of change and replacement of some or all the species in a community. Can take 100 or 1,000 years. Each new community makes it harder for the previous one to survive. So it's a gradual process based from like um, volcanic eruption. So when the lava got cooler, become some plants or species might be gone. So so they the so that's why it happened a ecological succession, and it's to take long time to go back on what it has been or what does it look like of before when the eruption not happened. It takes more than a year or more than 100 years or a decade where it will go back, and it take long process in order to go back on what it looks like in what it is before. That's why that is the also a ecological succession. It's a changing of and replacement of the species in a community. Next is there are two types of ecological succession: the primary succession and the secondary succession. Ecologists recognize two main types of ecological succession depending on the conditions present at the beginning of the process. So in this module, I'm going to discuss what is primary succession and secondary succession, and how we can determine if that situation is a primary succession or a secondary succession. And also I will give some example that might be happen, or that it will be occur in the future, so that we can determine what is a primary succession and a secondary succession. Primary succession. So what is primary succession? Primary succession involves the gradual establishment of biotic communities in lifeless area where there is no soils in a terrestrial ecosystem or no bottom sediments on an aquatic. So it stated here is that where there is no soil in a terrestrial is the rock exposed by the retreating glaciers. It's where it has no soils, or it's only a rock where it's a group or a pile of rock where there is no chances. There is no it has not a soil, like because of that it takes long time in order to plant to grow there. First is gonna the exposed rock where the lichens and mosses were the lichens and mosses where it will grow there, and then the it will slowly slowly compose a, or they will they will help they will break, or they will cultivate that area in order to make it soil like. And also the lichens and mosses will help the mosses and lichens help the area to be to be cultivated. And also the weather also, it helps the lichens and mosses in order to cultivate that exposed rock. And also if that happen, the lichens and mosses will cultivate that area there. It will produce, or it's make the rock into a soil, but it's take long time because it's slowly processed in order to produce or to make a soil from the rock, or in order to make a soil where the plants can grow. And also, if that happen, the light chain on Moses will is help the ecosystem. And then the next process is that when the rock will gonna soil, the small herbs and shrubs will kuan will mutubo dito ang small herbs and shrubs. And then the heat mat, or where the plant will go taller and taller. Then that happen, the jack pine and black spruce and aspen will go higher. Here, pepper, birch, and the white spruce forest community, where the area will go back on what it's look like, or it will going like a forest, or a forest or a rainforest. Here are the examples of primary succession. What I have stated lately: the bare rock exposed by retreating glaciers, the new cold lava, a abandoned highway or parking lot, or abandoned or like abandoned swimming pool, or abandoned building, or etc. So here is the primary succession happen from pioneer species, intermediate species to climax community. That is a primary succession. Next is secondary succession, in which areas of communities or ecosystem with different species develop in places containing soil or bottom sediments. This type of succession begins in an area where an ecosystem has been disturbed, removed, or destroyed, but some soil or bottom sediments are remains. So, secondary succession is different from primary succession. In primary succession, it has no soil, but in secondary succession has soils. It happens when the area is being removed or destroyed. So even if that area is removed or disturbed, it has it's the soil of that area is still remain. So one example of it is the burn or cut trees. So when that happen, the some species or the plants of that area will gone, or the were gone. So that means the not that not so that means the secondary succession happens. So it's take a short period of time, only it's took a short period of time to recover on that to cover in that situation. The plants will go back easily, and it will go back on what it's look like. And if that happen, the secondary succession has on that area, on that situation. So example of secondary succession: abandoned farmland, and what I've stated lately, a cut born or cut forest. And also, if is sample of an additional example of secondary section is heavily polluted streams and land that has been flooded. So what I have stated lately, the born or cut forest, where the plant will go back easily, and the soil is still remain, not like the kanang primary succession that there is no soils. So like this, in this abandoned farmland, so before, like sa una kuan pa ni siya kanang kamaisan. So there's napagapon ang soil, so walay makakuan nga and that farm mobayik siya. So unsa siya, like mahimo siya jang gubat or forest, kay and it all yung kanang dali ra pud niya nga maka-recover on that situation, kay na naman daan og na naman siya daan nga soil, not like in the primary succession nga only nga mga bato-bato ra siya nga why soil nga makakuha og nutrients sa mga plants. So here is the process or step, the sequence in order to or what we can classify if that is a secondary succession na here is the fire happen, then the pioneer species, the intermediate species, and the climax community. That is a secondary succession. So the difference between primary succession and secondary succession. Primary succession, it's take long period of time in order to recover on that place, while the secondary succession, it has a short period of time. And in primary succession, it has no soil, only like mga barracks, mga cements, or like abandoned, like what I've said lately, abandoned parking lot, abandoned swimming pool or establishment where there is no soil in order to plant to grow on that area. It's take a long period of time, while the secondary succession, it has a soil, but the plant of that area is being disturbed or born, like that what I have stated lately, nga katong nasunog or gikat ang trees, so some species on that area is have gone. So pero it take short period of time naman aron maka-recover siya. That is a primary secondary succession. Living systems are sustained through constant change, but there are limits. All living systems, from a cells to a biosphere, are constantly changing in response to changing environment. Tal condition continents move, the climate change and disturbance of succession change the composition of communities and ecosystem. Living system contain complex parts and process to interact to provide some degree of sustainability over its system expected lifespan. This stability or capacity to withstand external stress disturbance is maintained only by constant change in response to changing environmental conditions. For example, in a not matured tropical rainforest, some trees die and others take their place. However, unless the forest is cut or burned or otherwise destroyed, you will still recognize it as a tropical rainforest after 50 or 100 years from now. One is it is useful to distinguish between two aspects of stability of in living system. One is inertia or persistence, the ability of living systems such as grassland or forests to survive moderate disturbance. A second factor is resilience, the ability of living system to be restored through a secondary succession after more or severe disturbance. Evidence suggests that some ecosystems have one of those properties but not the other. For example, tropical rainforests have high species richness and high inertia, and those are resistant to significant change or destruction. But once a large tract or tropical rainforest is severely damaged, the resilience of the resulting degraded ecosystem may be low. That forest may reach an ecological tipping point. And that's all. Thank you.